The large round chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with the voices of 100 different species. Floating orbs of light hovered near the ceiling, casting a soft blue glow over the tiered seats that rose in a circle around the central speaking platform. John Miller straightened his formal diplomatic uniform and took a deep breath. After 15 years as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Confederation, he had grown used to the strange smells, the odd lighting, and the constant feeling of being looked down upon. Today that would end. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Miller of Earth," announced the tall, thin alien at the center podium. Grand Minister Qualfon's voice echoed through the chamber, his forearms raised to quiet the murmuring delegates. John stepped onto the platform, feeling the weight of 7 billion humans on his shoulders. He looked around at the faces of the council members, some with too many eyes, others with none at all, but all sharing the same expression of bored tolerance. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," John began, his voice steady. "For 63 years, humanity has been part of this confederation. We have followed your rules. We have lived within your restrictions. We have offered our help and skills wherever needed." Several council members shifted in their seats. The Dravak representative clicked his mandibles in what John had learned was a sign of impatience. Yesterday, this council passed Resolution 5293B, placing further limits on human expansion and technology development. John paused, letting the words hang in the air. This was the final test, a test you have failed. Now the chamber grew quieter. The Arkelian delegate leaned forward, her scaled brow furrowed. "Humanity has maintained your translation systems, fixed your ancient power grids, and found solutions to problems your scientists couldn't solve for centuries. Yet you still classify us as a developing species with limited rights." John pulled a small device from his pocket and placed it on the platform. It projected a document into the air, the official seal of Earth's unified government clearly visible. "As of today, Earth and all human colonies are giving formal notice of withdrawal from the Galactic Confederation. We will complete our exit within one standard galactic month." The chamber erupted. Some delegates jumped to their feet. Others slammed appendages on their consoles. The Vorsian representative, Zixtel, watched silently, his large red eyes narrowing. Qualfon banged his ceremonial staff on the floor. "Order. We will have order." When the noise finally settled, Qualfon's voice dripped with condescension. "Ambassador Miller, surely your government understands that no developing species can survive without Confederation support. Your colonies depend on our trade networks. Your ships use our jump gates. This is clearly a negotiating tactic." John smiled for the first time that day. "It is not. Humanity has decided to walk its own path." "You'll be back," called out the Dravak representative, his voice triggering translator implants throughout the room. "When your systems fail and your colonies starve, you'll come crawling back." Laughter rippled through the chamber. John waited for it to fade. "For decades, you've underestimated humans. You see us as primitive because we're younger than your civilizations. You never stopped to consider that we might have been watching, learning, and preparing." John picked up his device and stepped down from the platform. "Humanity won't be coming back. In fact, I suspect some of you may come looking for us before long." As he walked toward the exit, the council erupted again into arguments and exclamations. John caught the eye of Zixtel, who gave him a small nod of what might have been respect or worry. Outside in the corridor, John's assistant Patricia Dawson waited, her admiral's uniform crisp and formal. "How did they take it?" she asked. "Exactly as expected," John replied. "They think we're bluffing." Patricia smiled. "Fleet Command reports all ships are in position. Operation Exodus can begin whenever you give the word." John looked back at the closed doors of the council chamber. "Send the signal. It's time for humanity to leave this nest and spread our wings." As they walked away, neither human noticed the small monitoring drone following them, its single eye recording everything for a very concerned Zixtel. Admiral Patricia Dawson stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Resolute, watching the massive display that showed hundreds of human ships moving across mapped space. Each glowing dot represented a vessel heading back to Earth-controlled territory. The sight filled her with both pride and worry. "Status report," she said to the bridge crew. "Mining outpost on Viridian 5 has completed shutdown," replied Lieutenant Ryan Ellis from his station. "All personnel and equipment are loaded for transport. The research station in the Proxima system has wiped their databases and is beginning departure procedures," added Communications Officer Kate Nelson. Patricia nodded. "And what about the maintenance crews on the central hub?" "That's trickier," said Security Chief Greg Foster. "The aliens are trying to convince our people to stay, offering double pay, citizenship rights, all sorts of promises they never made before." Patricia walked closer to the main screen, studying the largest dot representing the Central Galactic Trade Hub. This massive station served as the heart of Confederation commerce, where thousands of species traded goods from millions of worlds. And for 40 years, humans had quietly become the ones who kept its ancient systems running. "Tell them to stick to the plan," Patricia ordered. "Everyone leaves. No exceptions." On the other side of Confederation space, Zixtal of the Vorjan Empire sat in his private chamber, reviewing reports with growing concern. As a mid-level council member, he had access to information other representatives ignored. The data on his screen showed the true extent of human integration into Confederation infrastructure. "This is worse than I feared," he muttered to his aide. "Humans maintain 73% of critical systems across Council space. Look at these numbers." His aide, a younger Vorjan named Krell, looked troubled. "The Council believes other species can easily replace them." "The Council is wrong," Zixtal said. "Most races specialize in their own technologies. Humans are the only ones who can work with everyone's systems. They understand the old machine languages and the new interfaces. Perhaps we should raise these concerns officially," Krell suggested. Zixtal laughed bitterly. "And admit the primitive apes are essential. The high-ranking members would never acknowledge such a thing." Back on Earth, the massive operation continued. John Miller walked through the Global Command Center built beneath the Rocky Mountains. The huge underground facility buzzed with activity as coordinators managed the largest movement of people in human history. "How are we doing on time?" John asked the center's director, Susan Rivera. Susan pointed to the giant countdown clock on the wall. 17 days left until our official exit deadline. We're ahead of schedule on most evacuations, but some remote outposts will be cutting it close." John nodded, watching the screens showing human ships and crews departing alien worlds. "And our special projects." Susan led him to a secure area where fewer people worked at specialized stations. "Operation Backup is at 92% completion. We've copied almost every critical system we've worked on. The knowledge repository will be the most complete collection of Confederation technology ever assembled." "Good," John said quietly. "They never realized that while they were watching us for signs of aggression, we were learning how everything works." On the central hub, Chief Engineer Peter Martinez supervised the final disconnection of human-maintained systems. His team had spent the last week documenting everything and training alien apprentices, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. "Are you sure you have to leave?" asked Kroon, an insectoid alien who had worked alongside Peter for years. "The station needs you." Peter looked at his friend with sympathy. "Rules are rules, Kroon. The Council made their choice, and now we've made ours. But what happens when the primary systems fail? The secondary routines are written in ancient Praxian. Nobody alive understands that language except your human programmers." Peter patted Kroon's hard exoskeleton. "You should have thought about that before your leaders decided we weren't worth respecting." As Peter walked away to join the last transport ship, the lights in the corridor flickered briefly, the first sign of the troubles to come. 2 months after humanity's departure, Lieutenant Daniel Garcia sat at the monitoring station aboard the observation vessel Sentinel. His small team had been assigned to the edge of what was once Confederation space, watching from a distance as humanity's absence began to show its effects. "Sir, "I'm getting another unofficial transmission," said Specialist Amy Winters, her eyes fixed on her screen. "It's from a Trilaxian merchant ship." Daniel moved to her station. "Let's hear it." The message played, crackling with static. "This is Captain Zoran of the trading vessel Bright Star. We seek human technical assistance. Our navigation systems are failing, and we cannot connect to the hub network. We offer payment in rare minerals. Please respond." Amy looked up at Daniel. "That's the 5th distress call today. They're getting more desperate." Daniel sighed. "Log it with the others. Forward it to command. We have strict orders not to engage." Across the room, Analyst Frank Hudson called out, "Lieutenant, you should see this. The central hub is showing major power fluctuations. On the main screen, the massive space station that served as the heart of galactic commerce was experiencing visible problems. Sections were going dark, then lighting up again. Ships were backing away from docking ports." "Record everything," Daniel ordered. This is exactly what the Admiral predicted. In the council chamber, the mood had shifted from dismissive to concerned. Grand Minister Qualfon struggled to maintain order as representatives shouted over one another. "The automated trade routing systems have been offline for 3 days," yelled the Mercantile Alliance delegate. "Shipments are piling up with nowhere to go." "The translation matrices are degrading," added another representative. "Some outer systems can no longer communicate with the core worlds." Zixtal rose from his seat, his red eyes scanning the chamber. "Perhaps it is time we formally request human assistance. They clearly understood these systems better than we realized." Qualfon bristled, his thin frame stiffening. "Absolutely not. We will not give those primitives the satisfaction. Our best engineers are working on solutions. Your pride will destroy the Confederation," Zixtal replied, his voice carrying across the chamber. "These systems were ancient when my species first reached the stars. The humans were the only ones who bothered to truly learn how they worked." On Earth, President Samantha Powell met with her advisors in the Oval Office. The room was tense as they reviewed reports from their observation teams. "It's happening faster than we expected," said Defense Secretary Carl Bennett. "The hub systems are failing. Trade routes are disrupted, and at least 3 border disputes have broken out over resources." John Miller nodded. "Without the automated allocation systems, species are competing for supplies they once took for granted." President Powell tapped her fingers on the desk. "Have we received any official requests for assistance?" "None," John replied. "Though our observation posts have logged over 200 unofficial pleas for help. The Council is too proud to admit they need us." "And what about unofficial channels?" Powell asked. Dr. Jeff Lawson, the science advisor, spoke up. "Zixtal of the Vorsian Empire has been sending coded messages suggesting a private meeting. He seems to understand the severity of the situation." Powell stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Washington Monument in the distance, arranged the meeting with Zixtal. "It's time to establish our terms. The Confederation must understand that we will only return as equals, not servants." Back at the central hub, panic was spreading. The food distribution system had failed, leaving thousands stranded without supplies. In the control center, alien engineers argued over incomprehensible code on ancient screens. "Try rerouting through the secondary matrix," shouted a tall, tentacled technician. "I can't. The language is pre-Confederation. None of us can read it," replied his colleague. In the darkened corridor outside, a small maintenance robot played a message on repeat. "System failure imminent. Please contact human maintenance crew. System failure imminent. Please contact human maintenance crew." But there were no humans left to hear it. 6 months had passed since humanity withdrew from the Confederation. Captain Lisa Ortiz watched the main screen on the Proxima Centauri monitoring station with growing concern. Red dots flashed across the display, showing conflicts breaking out across formerly peaceful sectors. "Another skirmish in the Cygnus sector," reported Officer Sam Kelly. "The Dravak and Valerian ships are fighting over a fuel depot." Lisa zoomed in on the area. That's the third resource conflict this week. The automated distribution systems must have completely failed. They have, Sam confirmed. Without those systems telling everyone who gets what, the stronger species are just taking what they want. Lisa made notes in her log. Earth needed to know exactly how the Confederation was falling apart. Not out of spite, but to prepare for what would come next. The station's communications officer called out, "Captain, we're receiving a direct message from Dr. Alan Wong on Earth. Priority 1. Lisa moved to the communications screen where the face of Earth's chief diplomat appeared. Dr. Wong, this is an unexpected pleasure. Captain Ortiz, I need your reports immediately, Alan said, his expression serious. Things are moving faster than anticipated. We've had 12 alien delegations arrive in the past week, all seeking separate treaties with Earth. Lisa raised her eyebrows. 12? Which species? Mostly mid-tier civilizations, the Arkelians, Trilaxians, even a Ziffan representative. They're breaking ranks with the Council. I'll send everything we've recorded, Lisa promised. The situation out here is deteriorating rapidly. In the presidential meeting room on Earth, Dr. Alan Wong briefed President Powell and her cabinet on the latest developments. The Confederation is fragmenting, he explained, pointing to a holographic map showing different colored sectors. These regions have effectively declared independence from Council authority. Defense Secretary Bennett looked troubled. Are they forming a united front against the Council? No, Alan replied. That's the problem. It's becoming every species for themselves. The carefully balanced resource-sharing systems have collapsed. Some worlds are already experiencing food shortages. President Powell studied the map. What are they asking of us? Technical assistance, mainly, Alan said. They want our engineers to fix their failing systems. In exchange, they're offering remarkable concessions. Mining rights, technology transfers, even territorial recognitions, the Council always denied us. John Miller spoke up from his seat at the table. Madam President, I believe it's time to implement the open-hand policy we discussed. Powell nodded slowly. I agree. Prepare a formal announcement. Earth will provide humanitarian and technical assistance to any civilization that recognizes our sovereign status and agrees to fair exchange terms. We won't let innocent beings suffer, but we won't be second-class citizens anymore. Across the galaxy, on the private estate of Council member Zixtal, a secret meeting took place. Zixtal welcomed representatives from 15 different species, all mid-ranking Council members who saw the coming collapse. The situation is worse than the Council admits, Zixtal told the gathered aliens. The ancient systems that regulated everything from trade to atmospheric controls on thousands of worlds are failing. Most were built by species long extinct. Only the humans took the time to understand them fully. A blue-skinned delegate raised a tentacle. What do you propose? We must break with the Council's position, Zixtal said firmly. Form a separate coalition and formally request human assistance. That's treason, gasped another representative. It's survival, Zixtal countered. Would you rather maintain your pride as your people starve? The humans aren't coming back on their own. We must meet their terms. As the delegates argued, news arrived that shook them all. 3 Dravak warships had attacked a human observation post near the Proxima sector. Earth's defense fleet had responded, destroying 2 attackers. It has begun, Zixtal said grimly. The desperate are becoming dangerous. If we don't act now, this could escalate into full war. As the meeting continued, none of them noticed the small camera hidden in the ceiling, transmitting everything to a very interested Grand Minister Qualfon. The once grand Galactic Council chamber was now a scene of disorder. Delegates shouted over each other, pounding on desks and waving appendages in anger. Grand Minister Qualfon had lost control of the proceedings days ago. Now he simply stood at his podium, watching the chaos unfold. The Arkelian Federation demands immediate action, shouted a tall, blue-skinned delegate. 3 of our colony worlds have lost life support systems. Millions will die without technical assistance. The Dravak Imperium will handle its own affairs, countered the insectoid representative. We need no help from humans or any other species. A smaller delegate stood on her chair to be seen. Easy for you to say. Your worlds were built with your own technology. Many of us live on ancient stations we never fully understood. Qualfon banged his ceremonial staff, but few noticed. His authority had crumbled along with the systems that once kept the Confederation functioning. At that moment, the chamber doors burst open. Security guards entered, escorting Zixtal and several delegates from his secret meeting. Their hands and tentacles were bound. Attention! Qualfon's voice finally cut through the noise. These traitors have been caught plotting against the Council. They plan to form a breakaway faction and ally with the humans. The chamber went silent for a moment, then erupted again, this time with some delegates shouting support for Zixtal. Perhaps they are right. Call the voice from the back. Better to seek help than watch our worlds die. Deep in Arkelian space, Chief Engineer Benjamin Ross led a team of human specialists toward a massive power facility. Their ship had arrived just hours earlier, responding to an urgent request that bypassed Council authority completely. The situation is critical, explained the Arkelian guide leading them through the facility. The antimatter containment system is failing. If it collapses, 3 star systems will be destroyed. Ben nodded, studying the readouts on his tablet. The code architecture is ancient Praxian. Like most of the really old systems, we've worked with this before. His team set up their equipment and began connecting to the facility's computers. The Arkelian engineers watched in amazement as the humans navigated the incomprehensible systems with practiced ease. How do you understand these ancient languages? One asked. Ben smiled as his fingers flew across the interface. Humans are curious. When we found these systems, we weren't satisfied just knowing they worked. We wanted to know how and why. We spent decades decoding them while the Council races were content to let them run without understanding them. After 6 hours of intense work, the containment system stabilized. Warning lights turned green across the facility. The Arkelian administrator bowed deeply to Ben and his team. The Arkelian Federation is forever in humanity's debt, she said formally. Our government will sign the treaty offered by Earth immediately. Equal status, open exchange of knowledge, mutual defense. Back on Earth, President Powell addressed a crowded press conference. Today marks a turning point, she announced. 17 former Confederation species have now signed treaties with Earth under our open-hand policy. Humanitarian aid is flowing to affected worlds, and our technical teams are addressing the most critical system failures. A reporter raised her hand. Madam President, what about the Council's accusations that Earth is deliberately dividing the Confederation? Powell's expression hardened. The Confederation began falling apart the moment they dismissed humanity's value. We didn't sabotage anything when we left. We simply stopped maintaining what was never properly appreciated. In a secret holding cell on the Council station, Zixtal sat alone. The guards had taken the other delegates away hours ago. He wondered if they would face execution for their treason. The door slid open, revealing Grand Minister Qualfon. The once proud leader looked tired, his skin pale. You were right, Qualfon said quietly. The systems are failing faster than we can understand them. Then release me, Zixtal replied. Let me contact the humans officially. Qualfon's 4 hands clenched. It's too late. The Emergency Council has voted. We will use military force to bring the breakaway worlds back into line and capture human technical experts to force their assistance. Zixtal stared in horror. You're declaring war on humanity. That's madness. That's survival, Qualfon replied, using Zixtal's own words against him as he turned to leave. Commander Olivia Martinez stood on the bridge of the humanitarian vessel Hope, watching as her crew coordinated relief supplies for the struggling Trilaxian colony below. The once thriving world now suffered from failing atmospheric processors and food production systems. Medical teams report 2,300 cases of malnutrition, said her first officer, Paul Wright. Their food synthesis systems failed weeks ago. Olivia nodded grimly. Get our agricultural specialists down there. I want those systems running again within 48 hours. A young communications officer turned from her station. Commander, urgent message from Earth Command. Council forces have been detected moving toward this system. Olivia's expression hardened. How long until they arrive? 6 hours at their current speed. Continue the relief operation, Olivia ordered, but prepare the ship for emergency departure if necessary. And alert our escort vessels. 2 human combat ships hovered in orbit, protecting the humanitarian mission. Council leaders had made their intentions clear. They would use force to maintain their control and acquire human expertise by any means necessary. On Earth, Dr. William Jackson reviewed the latest reports from across former Confederation space. As the leading xenosociologist in the Human Diplomatic Corps, he tracked how different alien cultures were responding to the ongoing crisis. It's fascinating, he told his colleague Dr. Megan Lewis. Species that were traditionally allied with anti-human factions are now rapidly adopting human practices. On his screen, images showed alien worlds where humans were now welcomed as heroes. Arkelian children were learning Earth languages. Ziffan engineers were studying human technical manuals. Even some Vorsian colonies had begun displaying human cultural symbols. The Council always feared human influence would spread, Megan observed. That's why they kept us restricted all these years. William nodded. They feared cultural contamination more than military threat. And now it's happening anyway. Because we're helping people while they're failing to protect their own citizens. Their conversation was interrupted when an aide rushed in. Dr. Jackson, we've received an encrypted transmission from inside Council space. It's from Zixtal. The Vorsian Council member's face appeared on screen, his red eyes darting nervously as if afraid of being discovered. Dr. Jackson, I have little time. Qualthon has ordered military action against human ships and allied worlds. 3 battle groups have already deployed. William leaned forward. We've detected some movement, but nothing of that scale. They're using older hyperspace routes to mask their approach, Zixtal explained. They plan to capture your humanitarian vessels and take your specialists prisoner. Why are you telling us this? William asked. You're risking your life. Zixtal's face showed grim determination. Because this path leads to destruction. The Council is dying, but refuses to accept it. I've transmitted the battle plans to this channel. Save your people, Dr. Jackson. At the edge of human space, Admiral Dawson received the warning and immediately ordered the defense fleet to alert status. Within hours, 25 combat vessels moved to protect humanitarian missions across former Confederation territory. In the Trilaxian system, Commander Martinez watched as 2 Council warships emerged from hyperspace earlier than expected. They've changed course, her tactical officer reported. Approaching fast. Olivia activated the ship-wide communications. All personnel, secure your stations. Medical teams, continue your work as long as possible. We will not abandon these people unless absolutely necessary. The Council ships transmitted a message. Human vessel, power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with force. Olivia was about to respond when 3 human defense ships appeared behind the Council vessels, weapons charged. This is Captain Eric Jordan of the Earth Defense Force. Came a new transmission directed at the Council ships. The vessel you are threatening is on a humanitarian mission protected under interstellar law. Stand down immediately or face consequences. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then the Council ships began to turn away. They're retreating, the tactical officer announced, relief evident in his voice. Olivia let out the breath she'd been holding. Tell Captain Jordan we appreciate the escort, and let the medical teams know they can continue their work. As the Council ships disappeared into hyperspace, Olivia knew this was just the beginning. The Council was growing desperate, and desperate powers often made dangerous choices. 1 year had passed since humanity's departure from the Confederation. Ambassador John Miller adjusted his formal uniform as he prepared to enter the Council chamber once again. This time, he would not be alone. Behind him stood representatives from 27 former Confederation species who had signed treaties with Earth. "Are you ready for this, Ambassador?" asked the Arkelian representative beside him. John nodded. "A year ago, they laughed when I told them we were leaving. Let's see if they're still laughing now." The massive doors to the chamber opened. Inside, the room was only half full. Many seats remained empty, abandoned by species who had either joined with humanity or simply given up on the failing Confederation. Grand Minister Qualthon looked much older than when John had last seen him. The tall alien skin had grayed, and his 4 arms seemed to tremble slightly as he raised them for silence. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Miller of Earth and his delegates," Qualthon announced, his voice lacking its former confidence. John walked to the central platform, feeling very different than he had a year ago. Then he had been angry and determined. Now he felt only a calm certainty. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," John began. "1 year ago, I stood here to announce humanity's withdrawal from the Confederation. Today, I return with a proposal." He activated a small device that projected a detailed document into the air. "This is the charter for a new organization, the Interstellar Cooperative. Unlike the Confederation, it recognizes all sentient species as equals. There are no developing or advanced classifications. All members have equal voice and equal rights." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates leaned forward with interest. Others scowled or clicked their mandibles in displeasure. "Half the Confederation has already collapsed," John continued. "Your military attempts to force former members back into line have failed. Your economies are struggling without the systems humanity maintained." A delegate from the back called out, "So you return to gloat over our troubles?" John shook his head. "No, we return to offer a hand to those willing to build something better. The cooperative already includes 48 worlds. We invite all of you to join us, not as rulers or subjects, but as partners." Security Officer Nicole Franklin, standing at the back of the human delegation, noticed movement in the upper gallery. Her enhanced vision caught a glint of metal, a weapon being aimed at Ambassador Miller. Without hesitation, Nicole drew her sidearm and fired a perfect shot that knocked the weapon from the would-be assassin's grip. 2 more human security officers quickly subdued the attacker, a council loyalist from one of the old elite species. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates ducked under their seats while others shouted accusations. John Miller remained standing calmly at the center platform. When order finally returned, he spoke again. "Even now, when we come in peace with an offer of cooperation, some would respond with violence. This is why the old system failed. It was built on fear and control, not mutual respect." He looked directly at Qualthon. "The choice is yours. Continue to watch your Confederation crumble, or help us build something that can last." Qualthon's hands trembled more visibly now. "You ask us to surrender everything we have built over thousands of years." "No," John replied gently. "We ask you to evolve. To recognize that the future belongs to those who can work together despite their differences." To everyone's surprise, Zixtel stood from his seat. Though recently released from detention, he had been allowed to keep his position due to growing support among moderates. "I, for one, have seen enough," Zixtel announced. "The Vorsian Empire will join this cooperative." One by one, other delegates stood, some tentatively, others with conviction. By the time John left the chamber, nearly half the remaining council members had expressed interest in joining the new alliance. Outside, Nicole approached him. "That was a close call, Ambassador." John nodded, looking back at the council chamber doors. "The hardest changes always are. But I think we've turned a corner today." As they walked away, the old council chamber seemed smaller than before, a relic of a system whose time had passed. 5 years had passed since the formation of the Interstellar Cooperative. Admiral Patricia Dawson stood at the large viewing window of the Luna Assembly Hall, watching delegates from over 200 species arriving for the annual gathering. Earth's moon had become the center of a new galactic community, one built on mutual respect rather than ancient hierarchies. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" asked a familiar voice. Patricia turned to see John Miller approaching. Though no longer an ambassador, he remained a respected advisor to Earth's current representatives. "I still find it hard to believe sometimes," Patricia admitted. 5 years ago, we were considered barely worthy of a seat at the table. Now they come to us. Below them, the Grand Plaza teemed with diverse life forms. Some floated on anti-gravity platforms, others moved on multiple legs or tentacles. All were equal members of the cooperative. "The latest reports show trade volume has surpassed pre-Exodus levels," John said. "And the newly adapted systems are more efficient than the ancient ones we used to maintain." Patricia nodded. "Because now everyone contributes to their maintenance, rather than relying on humans to do all the work." Inside the great assembly hall, Professor Richard Coleman prepared to begin his lecture. What had started as a small class on human-alien relations had grown into required learning for diplomatic personnel of all species. His course, Galactic History, the Fall of the Confederation and Rise of the Cooperative, had become famous throughout known space. Students of all shapes and sizes filled the auditorium. Some required special atmospheric chambers, others special lighting, but all had come to learn. The critical lesson of the Exodus, Richard explained to his class, wasn't that humanity was essential to galactic civilization. It was that the Confederation's rigid hierarchy prevented true cooperation. A tall Arkelian student raised her hand. "But wasn't it human technical knowledge that saved many worlds when the systems failed?" Richard smiled. "Initially, yes, but the real revolution came afterward, when we began teaching rather than simply doing, when knowledge became shared rather than hoarded." In orbit around a distant star, Zixtel, now serving as a senior cooperative diplomat, met with Admiral Dawson aboard the exploration vessel Discovery. They watched as teams of mixed-species scientists prepared for the first mission beyond the boundaries of known space. When the Council first admitted humans to the Confederation, many feared you would be disruptive, Zixtel said, his red eyes reflecting the starlight. They were right, but not in the way they expected. Patricia looked at the diverse crew working together seamlessly. Humans worked alongside Vorgians, Arkelians, and even former Council elites. Sometimes systems need disruption to evolve. Zixtel made a sound that Patricia had learned was a Vorgian laugh. "Do you know what Grand Minister Qualfon said before he resigned? He said the greatest mistake was underestimating humanity's true strength." "Which was?" "Not your technology or even your adaptability," Zixtel replied, "but your ability to see beyond differences and form connections. While we saw a galaxy divided by species and evolutionary stages, you saw potential allies everywhere. On Earth, President Samantha Powell, now in her final year of office, signed the last treaties with former Council holdouts. The few isolationist factions that had resisted change had finally recognized that the future lay with the cooperative. With these signatures, she announced to the assembled press, the transition is complete. The Galactic Confederation is officially dissolved, and all former members have joined the cooperative." A reporter asked. "Looking back, did humanity plan for this outcome when you left the Council?" Powell smiled thoughtfully. "We didn't leave to watch the Confederation fall. We left because we deserved better. The fact that others came to the same conclusion wasn't our design. It was the natural result of a flawed system that needed to change." As night fell over the new cooperative headquarters on Luna, lights from 1,000 different worlds shined in the great dome. The stars above no longer represented distant, separate civilizations, but parts of a connected whole. The day humanity left, the Galactic Council had indeed fallen into chaos. But from that chaos had emerged something stronger, a true community of equals reaching for the stars together.